With a strong background in both local and international markets, Albion's passion for community extends beyond the professional role, as he has also dedicated himself to educating in project management. With his presentation, he was trying to give us more information about escaping the feature factory mindset in products. So
I hope so.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. So you can start, please.
All right. Hello to everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it, the presentations previously, and you're having fun today. I would like to start my presentation or my topic with an initial question. Why do we create businesses? Why do we create apps? Why do we create platforms? That is something that we need to think about it, regardless if we are starting alone or with a group of people. Usually, the initial and the natural thing that comes to mind is for your individual gaining value. So definitely for some kind of value or profit, regardless if it's grouped or individual. So basically, you are trying to take something back for the service or for the product that you are deploying or working on. But when you think, why is that working? Okay, we're back. So, to the initial question, why do we create platforms and why do we create businesses? That's the natural view that we already have because it's a human behavior. But when it comes to thinking of it a bit deeper level, you can see that that's just an ultimate goal or a result that you are intending to take. So, that doesn't say much when it comes to this. And you might think why all of this is related with the feature factory mindset. But I will get there. So, how do you do that? Usually, especially for the youngsters that have an idea and you have a plan for yourself or you start a company, especially on the startups, you don't actually take this into consideration. So when it comes to business, usually we discuss about you need to provide some kind of a value at the end of the day. And then another vague or ambiguous word is the value proposition. And especially if you are young and you don't have any kind of a business background, these sound a lot of high BS words. But, again, this is the point where you start thinking, okay, what we are talking about. So, in this case, this is not working again. Okay. So, when it comes to this, usually people think of what are you talking about? What is the idea behind? And since we have a history in this planet as human beings, something that never changed was the value exchange process within any industry, regardless if it's software or it's any other industry, and it doesn't matter if it's a startup or just big fat company. So basically, what this means is that users or customers will have problems, wants, and needs. And you, as a business, or as an individual, or as a startup, you will need to provide some kind of a product or service to actually have this cycle of the business done so you can exchange the value. So they pay you for some kind of a problem solving or covering the wants and needs that it gets there. So this is the value exchange matrix that never changed and will never change again when it comes to the business itself. But also, three elements never changed on this business exchange matrix. The first one is relevance. The second one is quantifiable value. And the third one is the unique differentiation. Usually people do take only this. But let me explain this. So the first one is how your product solves the customer's problems. So what kind of a problem space and gap are you having in there? So what kind of problems are there to be solved? The second one is the specific benefits of your own product. So every product has specific benefits that it delivers to the end user. And the third one, which I mentioned that we concentrate or we take it as the most important one, is what differentiates us in between other competitors that we already have. So why customers will buy from you instead of the other company. How many of you know this brand? How many of you have used it? A lot? Okay, nice. How many of you have used it from day one, like the first version? All right, much less. So Snapchat has a quite interesting story, and definitely we'll be there explaining how all of this is connected. So when you come to Snapchat's story and the value exchange matrix or proposition is that it launched in mid-2011. At first, they didn't have stories that we know now, disappearing stories. They had disappearing content of private communication in between one-on-one, so with a friend, or later with a group of friends. And they changed the game because at that point in time, there was instant chatting. So people were not chatting or were not communicating with pictures. They were communicating through chats and instant chats. But at the same time, during 2011 and 12, whoever remembers it, there was a hot topic of data privacy. And it was a thing or a gap that Snapchat used it, that you cannot read in between the lines or you cannot overlook a picture, but you can a text. So basically they were filling this gap of having that situation used for themselves. And by the way, Snapchat at that point of time, it was only a startup. It wasn't a big company that were using this gap. So basically they tackled a couple of points like disappearing content, so it vanished immediately after the view. It told you when you took the screenshot and the private communication in between the groups but not public. And how that evolved. So fast forward, a couple of years later, they were having the same points covered on the value exchange, but they were adding up to what initially made them famous or filled that gap. So they introduced the stories, public ones, because previously people were posting on Facebook and Instagram, but that was the public content, not a private one. And by the way, Instagram didn't have any chat at that point. Augmented reality and filters, it was firstly introduced by them. So basically no other company was doing that. Discovery section, it was more on the part of the news that it covered, and it was the first content within the Snapchat that you could see, and you could not find it anywhere else. And Snap Map and events that are still in use, and they made a shitload of money out of it. But now, when we go from what Snapchat upgraded after the initial release and after initial value that it brought to these users, if you remember, Instagram started with stories. So we were discussing about the stories that Instagram had publicly, and actually they made much more money for the public stories rather than Snapchat. But Snapchat was, again, pretty high. Then, because of the other correlations in between Facebook, Meta, and Instagram, we had Facebook stories. But do you remember who else joined the story business? It's LinkedIn. You remember the time, that weird time that LinkedIn was introducing stories. So at this point, this is one thing that it's important to understand when it comes to filling the gap that I was mentioning. And I promise you that I will be there. LinkedIn stories, this is how LinkedIn got caught up itself within the build trap. So basically what they did is that they were seeing all these platforms, social platforms, introducing stories, and it made shit a lot of money, and they thought it would be a good idea. But what they didn't cover, on the other hand, is that they never told its users on how to use it. Like what you will do. Use job? No, nobody does that. The same time, it's introducing to recruiters. They couldn't post the new job posts on LinkedIn stories. So basically, they didn't have any gap to fill within their concept and strategy that they were using. And this is important when it comes to build trap, because at the end of the day, build trap is when companies focus on the outputs that they are releasing it, rather than the outcomes that it brings to its own users. So when it comes to outcomes, LinkedIn didn't have any outcome. We want just to have that feature there, because everybody is doing it. Which brings to the second point. If you are not delivering any value, or you don't measure the success with value as a company, you will start measuring with shipping features. So how many features are your teams delivering to its users, regardless if there represents any value or anything else? And when companies do these 2 points, we come to the third one, which is the most important one. We mentioned at the beginning that the value exchange is something that gains you a profit, regardless if you're a startup or if you are a big fat company. When it comes to business, apps or platforms will start losing shares or market shares because they are actually changing the strategy of the company and the platform itself. So at some point, many people didn't know with LinkedIn stories if they should be posting with friends or colleagues, and it's not intended for that, because at the end of the day, we use LinkedIn for either articles, finding a new job, or promoting the company. So in this case, you start losing market shares, and what companies do usually during the build trap is that they start implementing frameworks of control. Basically saying that we need to craft new features with certain outcomes, and this is the way to do it, and the process through the frameworks itself. But something that is important, when it comes to escaping the build trap or not becoming in a feature factory mindset, problems are first and solutions are second. Because at the end of the day, it's pointless to build something that will not be used by anyone. So when you have this mindset change, you will have that the solutions that you provide are just the alignment in between the outcome that it intends to solve, so the problems that it will need to solve, rather than the vice versa. And outcomes over the outputs is when we define the success as the impact you make and not how much code you deploy. But how do you solve it? Product strategy? Maybe. Usually not like this. So the CEO said that it's highly requested, so we'll go do it, because that is the process that usually companies do that. Also not like this. So we don't want the last 3 ideas of our CEOs, because of the position they have, to impact with the process of how we build the platforms and how we build the apps. So in this case, we have a problem on how to find those gaps, because companies or the businesses have some gaps. And we have the 3 gaps that actually correlate with each other in between the outcomes that we plan, plans that we do for those outcomes, actions that we take, and then we come back to the outcomes on the user side. So the first gap is the knowledge gap, the difference in between what we do, or the management, what it does, and what it does like to know, and what we actually know about that part. So apparently LinkedIn didn't know that nobody wants LinkedIn stories. They want maybe better jobs or easier way to apply. And this wasn't known at that point. The second one is alignment gap. So how do we align the internal teams, and I'm not speaking only about the product teams, but vastly about any type of channel and any type of department there exists in one company. So alignment gap is the difference between what we want people or what we want our people to do and what they actually do. If you remember the case that at some point Microsoft found themselves working on 2 different projects and 2 different products, and both of them were mobile phones. And you started having 2 product teams, separate one, because it wasn't any alignment, and the knowledge gap wasn't actually done. The third one is effects gap. So the difference between what we expect our actions to provide or to have as a value back, and what is the achievements that we want to have at the end of the day when it comes to users and outcomes. So this is either how you find out if you are missing the strategic point within your organization, and how to fill those gaps so you can have a better product at the end of the day. So, how to do it afterwards? Let's imagine that you filled those gaps. The product kata is a systematic way on how to produce better products. And it's simple with a 4-step wheel. So the first one is understand the direction, company vision and strategic intent. This is the part where the management and strategic level should work on filling those gaps that we already mentioned. The second one is analyze the current state. Analyze the current state within the product team, analyze the current state within the business, analyze the current state within the market. Then you have to set the next goal. The next goal, it can be an outcome on an already existing product or totally a new line of product that platforms or hardware companies do. And then you choose the step of product process where you have 3 points of problem exploration, solution exploration, and solution optimization. So in this case, you take up this wheel and you start producing and experimenting and validating your thoughts and hypothesis within the product so it can have some kind of a value or outcome at the end of the day. And as a conclusion, there are 4 things to cover when it comes to not ending up onto the factory mindset. Focus on the outcomes over the outputs, right people on the right roles, fill the gaps with strategies and deploy it well to the team, empower people and embrace the fails as it goes. Because at the end of the day, we don't want everybody to push it in their own direction and having only the feature mindset, but actually creating an outcome that has deployed through features and produces a value at the end. So we want to concentrate not just to build the right things, but also to build things right. Thank you.
So that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I was wondering is, do you think that the feature factory mindset is it a product of legacy in enterprise organisations, or is it something that an organisation can catch? So can a modern outcome-orientated organisation become a feature factory, and what do you think this is like?
Honestly, in this case, I think that companies can become one, even though if they have a good process, and usually this takes to the level of leadership that they have, in the sense that if you are rewarding people for shipping features, of course that they will not care about the outcome that it produces. At the end of the day, they think that that is somebody else's problem. And they don't see themselves fit for building a right product, so they start shipping features so it can be measurable through roadmap and timelines and the way that they work within that platform. So you have the case with LinkedIn, and I would like to use this opportunity to mention that they were doing pretty well, and they were strategically aligned where do they see themselves in 5 and 6 years and 7 years. But since the market had a drop at that point of time, which is not under their control, and they were seeing other platforms, regardless that are not part of their own industry, they thought it would be a good idea to fit in. But where's the catch? LinkedIn can do it because they have a lot of budget. So basically, they can overcome this issue of not having that kind of a mindset, so they can just push the features out. And they resolved it, and they are still on the business. But let's imagine for the startup, or for a company that is growing right now and the budgets are tight, that kind of issue that you mentioned, and that kind of a mindset of the leadership where the product teams don't have the autonomy of doing the experimentation and validation of those hypotheses, then you will have an issue at the end because nobody will care for the end product. And users, you will lose users and market share.
Sorry, if I can ask one more question.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So if having a product mindset requires understanding our users and measuring our outcomes, how do we reconcile the need to do that with genuine user privacy?
The last part?
How do we reconcile effectively tracking our users to understand the problems and whether our solutions are solving their problems? How do we do that but also maintain genuine user privacy?
I have two different thoughts on it that I will explain. There is a joke that the CEO thinks, okay, we need to fill the customer needs, and it's been 10 years that you never talked to your customers. You don't even know which is the target group of your customers. I think there are two ways of validating those. First of all, I think that creating tribes within the product itself and the verticals that you are covering, it would be a good idea to actually cross-match the target groups and customer research that you do without being influenced in between two different product teams. That is one that you can cross-validate that. And the second one that I don't think that they do that much is the part of actually having those small bits of features as either A/B testing or experimentation that you will do, go onto a deep dive. We usually see only the first layer of data that we get and we process that. But because of missing time on the product teams and the mindset that you still need to run the business, we don't dive deep, especially when there is a problem or the hypothesis that you had didn't have a good measurement, good number on the feedback that you got, especially from the users. And these are the two things that I think there are processes and frameworks on how to combine. But the mindset I think that it should have within the product teams is validation and experimentation as the ultimate goal. Then you can find the ways based on the industry and characteristics of your platform itself. So I hope that I answered your question. Nice.
Thank you for your presentation. So I have a question about features. Can you simply add another feature that you see on another application? Like Instagram didn't have at the time the chat, Snapchat didn't have the story. Can you simply add it, or can you get sued for that, or how does this work?
Not really, but when you think of it, T-Mobile Global patented their color. So we are living in a weird world. So I don't think that you will get sued in any kind of way, but it's not the idea. Because usually should be a combination on what is your target group, so what is your target audience, and then actually going through what we discussed already here to validate if actually the customer wants that. Because you can totally, it's okay to add new features into the platform, but what kind of thing you are resolving or a problem you are resolving, it's another story. So I think, yeah, that's the answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to continue with another question. So thank you very much for the presentation. It was great. And I would like to know this issue, how to handle it in a service-based company. So in this kind of companies, we take the request for features from the clients, and how can we manage the clients? How can we educate them, and what could it help in this process?
I think the answer is within your question. So basically, we educate. It's not that every time we have the opportunity to do so, but when we speak about the product mindset, it's a concept that you need to believe in. And then you need to create either yourself the space or it's given by those leaders. Let's imagine a case where you're in a service business, right? So basically you are offering the consultancy, the development, and etc., etc. When it comes to clients, I would rather choose on educating the client bits by bits to create that space that we can say no to a feature and actually explain it. Because at one point that product will not be successful and we will be losing the business itself. So I think this is the mindset we need to push and the leadership style that we need to choose so we can push these agendas or these mindsets within that company that we are collaborating or offering the services to. If you ask me, okay, the client or the organization that you're offering the services to doesn't want to hear. At the end of the day, then you cannot push things from the outside of your organization and to another one just because it's the right thing to do. But definitely I would suggest to have this talk first.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Albion. Really liked it.
Thank you.
I have one question regarding coming from a feature factory. What do you see as the biggest challenge from transitioning from a feature factory to an outcome-based organization? Like, where are the struggles? Where do you see in companies? What patterns do you see there, and how would you recommend addressing those?
So the biggest challenge I see is totally the misalignment of the mindset and the goals of the company. So when you ask the C-suite, they will definitely talk about growth and business, right? So we want ourselves in a better position, growing constantly each year on 30%. When it comes to the CTOs, they have different kind of problems that they need to solve. And they don't care necessarily on the first level for the growth itself. It's more on how we can better align ourselves technically. When you talk to the product teams, they will talk about innovation because we want to be the first ones in the market with a feature or differentiate ourselves in that mindset. So when you connect all these dots, personally thinking, is that the mindset of the company, where are we aiming, should be simple and structured. And then actually come up with the goals and the outcomes that the product represents for us. So the challenge is how to align different levels of people within the company and have a clear goal on what is the ultimate result that we want as a company. And do this. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I would like to thank you for your presentation first, and then I would like to know your perspective on whether we should always listen to the users when it comes to deciding for a feature. So what do you think? Because I've seen some cases that some big companies don't listen to their users, and then the users get adapted to this. So I would just like to get your perspective on this as well.
It's an interesting article that I would like to mention, is that they did an experiment on how people feel in regards to an app. So they had a target group, so a focus group, that they've asked, like, list all the features that you would like to have within a platform that is, let's say, just a test for us. And they built that. And after it was deployed to the same group, and of course I'm speaking about taking, let's say, 5 features that were mostly requested by all of these all of the people within the focus groups. And at the end of the day, the ratio of feature not used in that app again went up for 50%. So this aligns with your question, should we listen always to the user? I think the user at the end of the day is the validation point. It's pointless to build something that they will not use, but at the same time, should you enforce features just because you think that it's a good idea, it's not the way to go. So I think the answer lies in between these two, and definitely you would go deeper into the problem-solving techniques or ways within your product, and with that problem space that is created for any kind of issue that our society has, and try to see patterns and gaps that you would like to fill. And not necessarily the way that you want to fill is the right way that they want to get it in return. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The presentation was great. My question for you is, in the product Kana, the first part we were talking about the vision of the company. Yes. So how Do we know when we have multiple choices to go for the future of our company, how do we know we're making the right choice? Knowing we have a lot of employees, for example, and we have something to lose. So in a way, failure is not really like an option because we have a budget to lose. How can we find the confidence in a choice?
That's why I said this is some misconception in between whoever understands what product management and developing means. Usually companies will say, we took 10 product managers and they will come up with ideas that will better position us within the market. But if you don't know on the strategic level and vision level, where do you want to stand as a company, which is the highest level within the company that actually decides on which way to go, then it will be transmitted to the product teams. It's not the vice versa. Because product teams at the end of the day can validate and can experiment, so they can provide data to these people that have the decision power and the positions to guide the entire company. But of course, at the end of the day, it's how this is perceived and interpreted on that level, so we kind of find a focus point, where do we want to go. Just a dummy example. LinkedIn doesn't want to be anymore a job portal. Wants to switch to totally a social media just like Facebook, Instagram, whoever else. That is not a decision of a product team. That is the decision that will be made either from the board or from the C-suite. And then the product teams will align their findings and their developments within that vision and within that strategic intent that the company wants to go. This is the answer. Thank
We
you.
are having only a time for just a remaining question. Only one question, please.
Yes. First of all, beautiful presentation, Albion.
Thank you.
Very insightful. When we're talking about escaping the feature factory mindset in products, I mean, what I'm trying to say is maybe you could provide us some insights when it comes to, fostering innovation and experimentation while still meeting the demands of, delivering tangible results within tight deadlines. Is there like an advice you have for people who try to, sort of experiment and innovate while trying to deliver results in tight schedules?
Well, best of luck for those people, first. This is something that I didn't touch a lot of ground on it because I was focused more on how to get there. But as I answered previously, it really matters on how the leadership views this. Does it provide the time so it can emerge data and findings out of those outcomes? Because it will take a lot of time. And maybe it could take more time to get things right. But then the point is, do you want to focus on that? Or just to measure how many features are you delivering? And then when you come to that point, the usual answer is, yeah, we are delivering constantly like 20 features per quarter, and still we are losing users. And you will still get to my point, or to the product thinking or product-led mindset, that you need to give space and time to product teams so they can innovate, they can take the time to validate and experiment, so the business can be in a better position in the future. So that's why good luck with that kind of mindset.
Thank you, Albion. Thanks
Thank
a lot.
you all.